Requesting everyone, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussions will begin. Please be seated. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It's an absolute privilege to introduce our next speaker for the Speed Talk sessions. A leading voice in development economics and governance, Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya has long been at the forefront of shaping policies that matters. As a distinguished fellow at the Center for Policy Dialogue, his work has consistently brought critical insights into the interconnected dynamics of policy, trade, and sustainable development, both in Bangladesh and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya to this stage. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good afternoon. Shall I wait for a minute or two? Let the colleagues settle in a bit more? Because my speed talk, the moment my countdown starts, I will have to finish it on time. So let me first take a couple of minutes to allow the colleagues to take their seats. Colleagues, please come in. The whole house is waiting for you. So good afternoon once again. You know, this particular event has been termed as Speed Talk. The only speedy thing I have done ever in my life is speed dating. I just wonder how that it will be different from what I'm going to do now. A speed talk is supposed to be a small intervention which is supposed to keep the audience awake after their lunch. I think Zilur must have planned it. So use me to keep you awake after a sumptuous lunch in that matter. If in the between I can share a couple of thoughts with you, that will be an extra. So, the subject of today, what I thought of sharing with you, what I'm looking at is my stopwatch, not my notes. So, what I'm going to talk about is the story of the fall of an authoritarian government, the Bangladesh story. Many people think that the fall of the government in Bangladesh a couple of months back is an exclusive, extraordinary event which has taken place in this country. I would like to argue that if you look at the history of the recent mankind and also study the literature which has been put to place in this around this particular experience, you will find a lot of similarity and emergence of a manual, if necessary, if not a grammar book of how to bring down an authoritarian government. As you may know that on 5th of August, the people and the students of Bangladesh brought down an authoritarian government which has been there for the last decade and a half. And the way it was done, one has to really reflect back and summarize the experience for posterity. The literature on what constitutes an authoritarian system is pretty diverse, and there is no conclusive evidence or conclusive, consensus on that matter. But here, I want to distinguish the authoritarian government from that of a totalitarian government, which is pretty different, may have similarities, and also within the authoritarian government, from those which can be flawed democracy or could be also the hybrid democracy for that matter. And there may be others. But the point I'm trying to say is that there is an exclusive, I think, in-depth agreement that there are three elements on which an authoritarian government survives. Those three elements are, first, it is lies. The second one is fear. And the third one is a bit of an development. So you have deep lies, pervasive fear, and a distorted development. These are the three basic elements of an authoritarian system. So what does that authoritarian system really do? There are two particular traits of that authoritarian system. The first one being suppression, and the second one being exclusion. So you suppress all pluralistic thoughts which may be there in your country, and you exclude all the possible stakeholders who could have been more productive in taking the country forward. So suppression and exclusion. So if you go back in the history of Bangladesh, and I don't have enough time for that, but many of you have experienced it in your own circumstances. So you create a state structure which essentially abhors pluralism. And it doesn't start or begin with or end with a fraud electoral process. It's a total takeover of all the organs of the state, whether it is legislature, whether it is the executive organ, or it is the judiciary. Along with that, outside the state, the other non-state actors, like the media, like the civil society, even the private sector, you see how they are being subjugated, if not co-opted, into the system as we see the country performs. So coming back on those three issues, the lie, the fear, and the development experience. So where does the lie start? The lie starts from the biography of the leader. To create a messiah complex, it transfers into its family. Then it goes into the history of the country. And then the lie starts, creating benign, to start with benign and then to malicious slanders about your opposition. And the lie doesn't stop there. The lies finally ends up, falsifying the numbers on the basis of which the country runs. Those numbers are the election outcomes. Those numbers are your investment figures, employment figures, and finally the GDP and the growth as it has happened in case of Bangladesh. Those lies, one wonders when do the lies catch up with the leader. The second one on the fear, what fear we are talking about? We are talking about the fear that you are going to lose stability, and stability is often considered as the continuity of the regime. And this stability and continuity, lack of it, creates a threat that without your social protection, you may lose your own personal identity and security, as well as your livelihood conditions in that matter. So the fear factor is so high, the fear that one day if you say something, the state apparatus will pick you up and take you away somewhere and where your relatives will never find you. What has come to be known as Ainaghar in Bangladesh. So this fear factor is one of the most potent tools of any authoritarian government which is there. And that keeps us subjugated to that tyranny which we have experienced in the country. The last but not the least, the element of it is the idea of prosperity, the illusion of prosperity. The illusion of prosperity is such that you have to create some growth in order to distribute the surplus among certain set of people so that you keep them also on your side. The problem is, it starts with crony capitalism, but then it ends up with the rise of the oligarchs. And the oligarchs are such handful of people. The politicians think that they have created them, but one fine morning, they discover the oligarchs are running them, not they are running the oligarchs. The problem with this economic development is that it is not at all inclusive. It thrives on inequality. It thrives on marginalization. And at the end of the day, you don't have enough resources to support not only investment, but also your public expenditure for health, education, social security. Exactly that happened in Bangladesh. We tried to fill up our democratic deficit with visible indicators of progress. I'm pretty sure many of you who have come from abroad have enjoyed coming fast to the hotel through those flyovers. You came very fast, but the country is going to pay through its nose for a long time to pay up those loans. So the issue is, how do you really sustain a development process which is inclusive, which is sustainable? And for that matter, what really happens is that since you do not spend money on your health, education and others, and you see you have a very poor quality of education, not only, there are gender gaps and other issues and those who are left behind, but nonetheless, whatever education was somehow received, they became just a piece of paper because they are not good enough to be employed by the market. So the marketability of those skills are so limited. You may have heard about our student leaders who spoke about their fight against the quota system in the government jobs. Why did they really go so excited about government jobs? On the one hand, there was no private investment to create sustainable economy, to provide them the jobs and employment. On the other hand, whatever jobs they have got into the government jobs was really given out to the chosen ones who are essentially party cadres, not the people who have really graduated from the university. So the quality of the education and the dearth of employment was really the ticking time bomb, which finally created or brought the downfall of the authoritarian regime. Colleagues and friends, my speed talk has not been fast enough. By this time, in a speed dating, somebody would have come and ring the bell, time is over, go over to the next table. I don't have another table to go to, so I will take 1 more minute to finish one. The point is, what happens after that? The post-history of the fall of authoritarian system is very diverse. We have seen experience where it has led to democratic transition. We have seen how the Arab Spring has led to the Arab Winter, but we have also success stories around in the Southeast Asia, Latin America, and sometimes in Africa in the Sub-Saharan. It may also lead to autocracy of a new form. There is no guarantee that fall of one authoritarian system always leads to the democratic outcome, even for a shorter period. So you have come to Bangladesh in its twilight zone. Your bright minds will help us to understand how the new world, the bold world will become more beautiful as we talk together over here. But for this afternoon, I must tell you, I have been very pleased to get this opportunity to talk to you about Bangladesh experience the way I have seen it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful speech. And good afternoon, everyone. Our next session is Narratives of Hope, Media, Civil Society, and Pursuit of Peace. Now, I would like to invite our honorable speakers on the stage. Please welcome Arjun Singh Kadian, Assistant Professor, Rishihut University; Badiul Alam Majumdar, Founder Secretary, Sujan and Head of Electoral Reform Commission, Interim Government of Bangladesh; Debjyoti Chanda, Professor, Department of Mass Communication, Rabindra Bharati University, India; Felix Gardes, Resident Representative, Fredericks Evert Stiptang; Sohail Mahmood, Director, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Pakistan; and at the last, our session moderator, David Patrician, journalist and international event moderator. Sorry, there is a correction. One of our speaker would be Nabin Murshid. Please, sir.